Jill Valentine and Claire Redfield are two of the most iconic and well-known Resident Evil characters. And since their debut in the 90s, they're characters that have a lot of diehard fans who have been waiting patiently for future new entries in the Resident Evil franchise where these characters can be main characters and playable again. But unfortunately, in the last 2 decades, it has not been a ray of sunshine or really good for either of these two characters. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask a question that nobody wants to ask, and the answer is an answer nobody wants to hear. But alas, I'm going to ask it anyway. Does Capcom even need Jill or Claire in the Resident Evil franchise anymore? What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil content for you. And today, if you want to call this part 2 of a video I made on New Year's Eve back in 2022, where I basically made a video talking about why does Capcom hate Jill and Claire, I guess you can call this a part 2. So, if you haven't checked out that video, I'll leave a link in the description. So, where is this one coming from? Why is this a part 2, technically? Where's this whole thing coming from? Where's it starting with? It still amazes me to this day how there's a lot of Resident Evil fans that still do not see the blatant disrespect and disregard towards Jill and Claire in the franchise compared to the other half of the main characters. And I'm going to once again highlight some moments and some concepts that were made in that original video, but also enlighten you on some other things. But the main purpose I want to add here is that question I asked at the intro. Does Capcom even need Jill and Claire anymore in Resident Evil? And I'm going to answer right now. No, they don't. In fact, they don't need them anymore. They are basically, pointless to use. They're probably more risk than reward at this point, and there's no reason why they should honestly bring them back, period. Now that's a bold claim and statement to make right there. And I know all the fans in us, including yours truly, are going to say, oh, of course not, hell no. They need to come back. It's Jill and Claire. Like, how can you say that? Once again, I'm not speaking from a fan's perspective. I'm speaking from Capcom's perspective. And that's a completely different perspective. Because honestly, if you look at it through Capcom's perspective, I think by the end of this video, you'll probably understand that the answer is going to be more than likely a no. And understand why it's got to be a no. But, obviously you want reasons why, through Capcom's perspective. Why shouldn't they bring them back? Well, let's get right into it. First of all, let's look at the history of these characters in terms of their entries, the ones they were in. In the last 2 decades, Jill and Claire have been used very, very seldom, if at all. I mean, you take a look at the last entry both these characters really were in, that was kind of like a really major entry with context involved. Now, I know technically people are going to say, well, Jill and Claire were used in the remakes, and put the remakes on the back burner for a second. But if you want to be technical about it, remakes are remakes. The Revelations games, both of them, are like spin-off games. I enjoyed them, but they're not major titles. They're little side story spin-off things. Claire's last major Resident Evil game she starred in was Code Veronica. And that was way back in 2000, I believe it came out. Jill's last major Resident Evil game she starred in was Resident Evil Nemesis. That came out in 1999. That's the last major Resident Evil title both of these characters starred in. Think about that for a second. 2 so-called main characters, important characters, haven't been a main character in a major Resident Evil title since like 2000 and 1999. Like, that's right around when the PS2 first came out. Like, or a little bit before. Like, that's wild. That's ridiculous. Like, guys, we're on PS5 timeline now, and kind of getting to the end stretch of that. But you get the point. Like, that's a lifetime ago. But Capcom doesn't disrespect. They treat them respect, right? Yeah. Tell me I'm wrong with that. But I know what you're thinking. Oh well, as I said, Revelations. They both were main characters in that. Once again, I love both Revelations, but Revelations, when it first came out, that was a 3DS game. That was a handheld game that eventually got ported to the consoles and stuff. In Revelation 2, I do like it, but once again, these are side spin-off games. They don't have the quality or development of cycle or time as the main entries. They've been relegated to side entries. But let's talk about the remakes. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, well, they remake. Once again, they're remakes. They're just remaking games we've already played before. But when it comes to brand new major entries, since Resident Evil Nemesis and since Code Veronica, they've completely been absent. How has the other half of Resident Evil been doing? A lot better. Chris and Leon, they've been doing a lot better. They obviously, since that time period, they basically have released multiple games where they were the main characters in. Even a game where they both starred as the main characters in that conveniently, Joe and Claire were absent in. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, that's Resident Evil 6. That's not one of the greater ones. I get it, but still, they were in it, and Joe and Claire weren't, ironically enough. But I digress. So, yeah, you look at the history in terms of usage, they're barely in it. But now let's look at the other thing. And this is a really big one here. And that's the whole respect mantra. That's the next category, respect. Okay? Capcom, we've already proven, doesn't respect Jill and Claire. But if you still want to live in that honeymoon phase that they do, let's talk about the remakes, for example. Okay? People are going to say, well, Resident Evil 2 Remake, I think at this moment, it's the most sold Resident Evil game on a single platform. I think eventually it's going to be the most sold on all platforms. It's still trailing RE5. It may possibly have already surpassed it, but you get the point. It's going to be inevitably. So, I know you're saying, oh, well, Resident Evil 2 Remake, huge success. Claire's in it, Hey, that's respect for Claire, right? Let's just be honest. What is the biggest reason why people got Resident Evil 2 Remake in the first place? What is the biggest reason Capcom probably remade Resident Evil 2 Remake in the first place? You made it. I'll tell you, and trust me, it ain't because of Claire. It's because of Leon. We all know Leon is the fans' golden boy. He's the most popular character in Resident Evil, and he just automatically sells by itself, okay? Leon is the main reason they did that. He's the main thing people talk about in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Claire is just an afterthought. In fact, I've heard so many theories about how Claire was just there to be there. It's Leon who did all the heavy lifting and did everything else, He's the main thing. I mean, hell, I remember there was a post, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I mentioned it before, where it was the day where Leon went to the city for the first time, Raccoon City, and it was a picture of him and Claire while they're driving, and then, Capcom basically posted, hey, on today's day, this is when Leon entered Raccoon City, and I'm thinking, okay, Claire's also in that picture, why didn't you mention her? I mean, hell, Capcom talks more about Tofu than they do about Claire in Resident Evil 2 Remake. She just happens to be there. But oh no, they respect her, right? And I'll get to that later on. But then we get to Resident Evil 3 Remake. I mean, do I have to explain that one? That's a remake that everyone unanimously always talks about how much they can't stand and how much it pissed them off and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go too deep in that. I mean, they've beaten that with a dead horse to this day. Because I still say it's a solid, enjoyable game, just not a great remake. The worst of the remakes, but it happens to be a Jill remake. Do you think they do that for Leon? Oh, of course not. But also, if you think, Claire was in Resident Evil 2 Remake, technically, they respect her. Okay, then why did they go directly from Resident Evil 3 Remake to Resident Evil 4 Remake? Why didn't they just remake Code Veronica? Yeah. We know the real reason why. Well, I guess two reasons. One of them, just the respect. They don't respect Claire enough to be able to do a game like that and be successful. Not saying it wouldn't be successful, but it's not going to be Resident Evil 4 Remake successful. And trust me, Resident Evil 4 Remake, in terms of its sales, I mean, it's the fastest selling Resident Evil game of all time. It's probably going to be the all-time best selling Resident Evil game at some point down in its history, because it's just selling like ridiculous amounts. But now let's get into the other category that kind of I just talked about right there, money. Once again, Jill and Claire do not have a great track record. I guess you could say money and reception. Jill and Claire do not have a great track record in terms of being critically accepted and selling well. Like a two combination right there. Now I know people are going to say, oh, Resident Evil 2 Remake, yeah. But once again, I already talked about how that game was successful because of Leon, not because of Claire. Alright? People can lie and say, oh, we enjoyed the Claire campaign. I hardly hear anybody talk about Claire. It's always Leon, okay? Most of the videos and discussions are all about Leon. Leon's progression. Leon, where he goes after that. It's not people talking about Claire outside the few diehard fans. Because let's be honest, most people don't even understand Claire, to be honest with you. So let's just be honest with that one. But that game sold a lot. And I go back to the whole, why did they not do Code Veronica Remake? Because Code Veronica Remake's never going to bring in that much money compared to Resident Evil 4 Remake. I mean, the original Code Veronica didn't bring in a lot of money. So yeah, they were really going to go for Code Veronica. And once again, I don't blame them from a financial standpoint. We all know Resident Evil 4 prints money, basically. And this one was going to be no exception. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. They're not going to do the Claire-led game. They're going to do the Leon-led game. Because Leon brings in money. Guess what? So does Chris. Chris Redfield brings in money because, hey, Resident Evil 5 for the longest time was the all-time best-selling Resident Evil game ever. But, go back to Resident Evil 3 Remake. Yeah, it sold a decent amount. I think it's like around like 9 million. That's no slouch. But here's the thing. Nobody's talking about that in a good way because, hey, I talked about the critical reception. That game didn't get the critical reception. It got a pretty bad reception from a lot of fans thinking it was a terrible remake. Do you think they would half-ass a Leon-esque remake? No, they won't. They're going to go all out. And when they did go all out, like, in RE4, do you think they'll do that to a Jill-led game or Claire-led game? And even though Claire was partially the lead in RE2 Remake, Capcom hardly talks about it or advertises it. It's always Leon. So, I'm just stating the things that goes on in this franchise. But, yeah, when you compare Jill and Claire, the Chris and Leon, yeah, it's not a fair fight. But here's the reality. Here's something that I think is going to hurt people a lot. And this is where I think people may get a darker picture in terms of Jill and Claire and why Capcom really doesn't need to bring them back. That Capcom doesn't need Jill and Claire anymore. They've served their purpose, and it's time, and I guess in their case, to probably just shelf them or barely use them. And not in any case be main characters again. And it's a thing that really is going to hurt a lot of people because even though we're doing the whole Chris-Leon comparison, people can respect Chris and Leon. They've been characters in Resident Evil franchise for 25 plus years. But there's another character that has proven that he can be more successful than Jill and Claire in the last 20 years combined. And he can sell better than Jill and Claire in the last 20 years combined. Who is that, you may ask? Ethan Winters. Yeah, that's right, people. Ethan Winters, a brand new character created in 2017, basically proves, almost with a shadow of doubt, why should Capcom even care about Jill or Claire and bring them back, period? I mean, maybe outside of an Easter egg or a reference or a scene, but in terms of being a main character, why? This guy basically, in his 8 years of existence, has sold more titles, has brought in a whole new era of fans in the franchise, revitalized the franchise almost single-handedly in 2 games, and you want Capcom to take chances on characters that haven't been really relevant in over 2 decades. Yes, from that standpoint, why in the world should Capcom bring them back? just because of a few diehard fans who are getting wielded out as age goes on. Because, as I said, a lot of those old school fans, they're getting older or they've already moved on. A lot of the new school fans, they don't really know too much about Jill and Claire. They don't know what made them so big back in the day. And that's the thing, back in the day, back in that PS1, PS2 era day. And once again, this is not me, the fan, speaking. This is me just understanding the context as well as understanding Capcom from a business point. Because Jill and Claire are characters that, in name alone, but in terms of their relevance, in right now, last 2 decades, they haven't done anything. But here's Ethan, a brand new character, regardless of what your feelings are about him. And take me personally, I'm not a crazy Ethan fan, but I'm not gonna lie to you and say, hey, he's brought in huge sales. I mean, Resident Evil 7 is a top. I don't know this off the top of my head, but I know it's a top 5 all-time selling Resident Evil game. I think it might be a top 3. I think it might be number 3 possibly. I mean, it's up there. I mean, it has incredible sales. And then Resident Evil Village is, until Resident Evil 4 Remake came out, it was actually the fastest selling Resident Evil title. Then obviously Resident Evil 4 Remake came out, and it's selling even faster at a rate. But, the amount of sales it's getting, and people generally, the newer fans, a lot of them are big, huge Ethan fans, and they're happy to see this character and his progression and stuff like that. That's something that Jill and Claire combined in the last 2 decades don't even equal 10% of. So here you have a situation where you have 2 characters that are seldomly or barely used at all. And if they really were that impactful in terms of Capcom's point of view, the sales would have dipped down, right? But they haven't. Ever since their last major mainline entries in Code Veronica and Resident Evil Nemesis, you've had Resident Evil 4, which is not only one of the best-selling titles in the game, it's not because they're one of the greatest games, period, of all time. You have Resident Evil 5 that held the mantle of the most sold Resident Evil game of all time. I know Resident Evil 6, from people might not know context, it might look like, because honestly, it shocked me too. It's actually sold a little bit more than Resident Evil 4, but at the time it was a critical financial failure. It's just that later on it's been discounted so many times, so it's sold so much after that. But it's kind of astounding. But that's one of the ones where a lot of people say that that's the thing that really dipped the franchise low. But even that low is better than Jill and Claire's high. That's the sad reality right there. The low of RE6 has been better than the high of Jill and Claire. That's the sad reality of it right there. And then you get to Resident Evil 7, a title that a lot of people say revitalized the franchise. It brought in a whole new era of Resident Evil fans. And a lot of people, how old school fans look at Jill and Claire, they're going to look at how they look at Ethan. Like, that's the guy that got me into this franchise who I've never been a part of, or I was just starting for the first time. And it's sold extremely well. And then Resident Evil Village has sold extremely well. And they're games where, a lot of people like the story of Ethan and, the whole dynamic of the Winters family. So I ask you again, does Capcom really need Jill and Claire anymore to be successful? And they don't. They don't have to put Jill and Claire in anything because they've already proven they don't need them and they can be successful. I mean, let's just be honest. I know I hear this comment a lot with the whole hoopla surrounding Resident Evil 9 and, are they going to include Jill or not? Because that's the character title name you hear more than anything else. And poor Claire just can't get a bone for anything. And the only time you hear anything about her, it's, they're just going to kill her off. So, yeah, a lot of respect there. But, let's be honest. We're not going to play the game because, Jill and Claire, guys, you've been playing games without Jill and Claire for forever, in terms of major entries. Why is it going to stop now? Did it stop people from buying, the remakes, Resident Evil 4 Remake? No, people still bought the hell of it. Like, go back to Code Veronica. Code Veronica should have been the next remake. Okay, well then why did everyone buy Resident Evil 4 Remake then? Why did they buy it so much? Like, practice what you preach, If you really cared that much, you would have stood true to your beliefs and be like, I want a Code Veronica remake, not Resident Evil 4 Remake. But no, you bought it anyway because you knew how you're going to buy it because that was where all the money was going to go because you liked that game. And honestly, you keep hearing people talk to hoopla and, we're going to support these games that have these characters that have been missing in action for so long and stuff. But let's be honest, no, you're not. I mean, you might still buy it, but you won't buy it as much as a Leon-led game or a Chris-led game. And sales have proven that. That's why I feel like the people that get mad, unfortunately, are the minority. And that's how Capcom is looking at it. They want to go where the money's going. And I don't blame them for that. I'm not trying to defend them. Trust me, I have my problems with them. I wish they would find a way to lose Jill and Claire. But at the same time, it seems like high risk and not as much reward. All you got to do is add Leon in a game, make him the main character, and that's going to sell indefinitely more than any Jill and Claire adventure combined. And that's just the reality. And Chris is going to sell more, because Resident Evil 5, for the longest time, was the most sold thing. I mean, you can say what you want about, people don't like the direction it is, but hey, didn't stop the sales of it. So at the end of the day, from a business perspective, Jill and Claire just don't have too much to offer for reasons why Capcom would go out of their way to include them. Now, I know some people are going to ask, well, what's the point of them doing the whole Death Island thing? What was the whole point of that? Well, let's just be honest. From Claire's standpoint, that's the definition of we just added them in there just for the sake of it. Because Claire could have never been in there and nothing changes. I seem to be the only person that was happy that Jill and Claire actually had one interaction. Because that's probably the dynamic duo I've always wanted to see in a game that'll never happen. But for Jill, it's the return of Jill. They're going to bring her back. Is it so much the return of Jill? Or is it more just another flex for Leon? Because it seems to be more, the more I think about the movie, more, hey, it's the fact that Leon met Jill for the first time, not so much that Jill came back. Because until Capcom, and I'm going to say this comment, until Capcom proves me wrong, I'm still not going to hold off on the whole, they brought Jill back. Because be careful what you wish for, because, yeah, they've technically brought Jill back. Who says they need to do anything more than that? Oh, well, they said they're going to use her. Use her how? I mean, they could have a cameo of her in the next one. That's using her. Oh, you didn't say how to use her. See, the devil's in the details. I'm not trying to sit here and say I have insider knowledge of, they're going to do something or not. I'm just going on Capcom's history. And Capcom has proven that they don't have a lot of urgency to really use Claire or Jill outside of mentioning them. I mean, they were absent from the franchise, both of them, for a long period of time in terms of, major entries. I mean, major entries, they've not had one in 25 years. They had absences where they didn't appear in anything for about 15 years each. Claire from Code Veronica to Revelations 2, and then Jill from, Resident Evil 5, Revelations to Death Island, because Revelations took before Resident Evil 5. So I said, yeah, Resident Evil 5 from Death Island. So, yeah, do you think they do that with Chris or Leon? Hell no, they won't. That's why Leon gets all the CGI movies, and that's why Chris, he's still involved in the franchise. I know technically people are going to say, hey, they haven't technically been a main character in a major Resident Evil title since Resident Evil 6. But when you compare that to what Jill and Claire has been through, it's night and day. I mean, it's night and day. So, guys, I'm not trying to get your hopes all dashed and think, this is what the future for Claire and Jill is, because I don't know what the future is going to be. I can only go by the history of Capcom. But at the same point, I can't get too mad at Capcom's lack of using them because they have found success with so many things that have nothing to do with Jill and Claire. Obviously, Leon, just about Prince money. But you know what? I can kind of say that to Ethan, too, a brand new character. So you have the old guard characters that they are having a safety blanket and using in Chris and Leon, characters that have proven they can sell and be iconic. And then you have brand new characters like Ethan who prove that they can sell and bring in a whole new audience. What does Jill and Claire have anything to offer outside of just being, nostalgic old school characters? I mean, yeah, you can use them. Maybe they appear, maybe they'll be a character you play in Mercenaries mode. But in terms of being a main character in a major entry, why would Capcom bring it back? It's a lot of risk because people don't have that affinity towards them as the old school fans. And as I said earlier, the old school fans, they're not as plentiful anymore. A lot of them are just the people you hear, the loud minority. But in terms of just the average Resident Evil fan that plays the games, I don't really think they have that same feeling of, we got to have Jill in the next game, or, Claire's got to get brought back and done respect and justice. No, they're just like, okay, these are characters that at one point they were in the franchise, but whatever, when's the next Leon game? When's he getting there? When are you going to do Chris? Oh, is Ethan going to get another story? So, I don't mean to paint a bad picture, people. I just want people to be more aware of things. And I always say this, Capcom, it's up to you to prove me wrong. And I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong. I would love to see Jill and Claire not just brought back, but used effectively, being major characters, being the main characters of a mainline Resident Evil game. Not some spin-off, but a major Resident Evil game. Maybe it's Resident Evil 9 or 10 or whatever it may be. But brought back and done right, done justice, done respectful. Because, let's just be honest, when they are brought back, it just seems like they're just half-assed or barely used. But when it comes to Leon or Chris, it's like they go through so much attention to detail, or even a brand new character like Ethan. It's like they go all out for that. But when it comes to an enjoyable experience with Jill and Claire in terms of a brand new entry, it's like they conveniently just either an afterthought or they just don't go all out. And that's where I've always said that I don't feel like Capcom respects Jill and Claire. And that's where I ultimately feel like Capcom kind of looks at Jill and Claire as, why do I really even need to bring these back? I mean, maybe we can give a reference. Maybe we'll put them in a CGI movie. Or maybe we'll just have some type of Easter egg or put them in like a playable character in Mercenaries. But in terms of a mainline Resident Evil game, yeah. Until Capcom does it, I'm still not going to lay off on this. But I don't want to leave it all negative because, yeah, maybe they will do it next. Who knows? But Capcom has to prove me wrong. Because we can keep running from the truth all we want, but in reality, Capcom has proven the exact opposite. And how do I know this? Well, as I said in this video, look at the past 2+ decades. That's all the evidence you need. So when I asked you the question, does Capcom really need Jill and Claire anymore? No, they really don't. But at the end of the day, as I always like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. How do you feel about how Capcom treats Jill and Claire? And do you feel like that they really don't need them anymore? Not from a fan perspective, but a company perspective. But that is going to be it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.